Well, we're going to take a nice little detour off 80 into Shredville. I think they should do that during football season. Just change the UC Davis exit. Change it to Shredville. Shredville. Yeah. You can change it back after football season. Joining us right now, as he has for this whole roller coaster this season, Coach Tim Plough of your UC Davis Aggies. Good morning, Coach.
Boys, how we doing?
Awesome.
Doing great. How are you doing?
Oh, it's awesome, man. It's a blessing to have another football game, so hopefully we can figure out a way to keep this rolling.
So what do you do with the bye that you earned? Obviously heal up, relax, whatever. But what are you doing with the guys during the week to keep them sharp? Because, again, fans always wonder this. I'm sure coaches do too. Byes are great, but also you don't want to be rusty going into this weekend.
Yeah, we basically practiced Tuesday, Wednesday of last week, and we, not having an opponent to prepare for because we didn't know who we were going to play. So we, as a staff, we spent all week breaking down both teams. But in those two practices, we just wanted to really compete against each other and make it known that, the rosters get limited in playoffs. You can't dress as many guys as you normally do. So basically we were communicating to the team that I kind of got one bone and two dogs. So it's time to compete against each other to see which guys are going to dress for the game. And then the guys were able to have Thursday to Sunday off. So the cool part about the bye and why it's so important to, play that well, if you can at the end of the year, is to so your players can go home to see their families for Thanksgiving. So, most of our guys were able to go home, see their families for Thanksgiving, and then they came back on Sunday. So that was awesome.
Coach, you do now know who you play, Illinois State. It was a weird game in a sense for them. They advanced. That's what their goal was. They gave up a ton of yards, but then forced, 8 turnovers? I mean, that was a little bizarre victory for those guys.
Yeah, there were some wild things in that game. We had the whole staff and all of our families in here on Saturday morning to hang out and watch the game, and you don't see 85 pass attempts very often, and you don't see 8 turnovers very often. So a really unique game. I think the thing it showed me was just how resilient Illinois State is. I mean, technically they're the high seed. They're supposed to have a home game, but because they scheduled high school playoffs, they don't get to play at home, so they have to travel on the road. And then they give up these yards, but they force all the turnovers, and they figure out a way to win the game. And I just think that's what good teams do. They figure out ways to win. And, their head coach has been there a long time. They've been to the national championship before. So they're a storied program from a really good conference. And that's what the playoffs is all about. You get to play teams you don't normally play, which is really cool. So we're looking forward to it. We know it's going to be a great game.
Coach, I want to ask you about the other playoffs, just as a college football fan, as somebody who played, as somebody who obviously is deeply involved, but going to the air quotes big guys and the first year of this whole playoff system, just as a fan, what do you think of it? And are you looking forward to seeing these matchups overall?
I love the fact that the playoff expanded because I think to say that there's only 4 teams every year that can win a national championship is not a true statement. So I think that to have 12 teams really will allow you to separate and show that multiple conferences and multiple teams, you really get to see a true national champion. So I think that's awesome. I love that the teams get to have home games, in those scenarios. I mean, as a former Boise State coach and someone that really loves the Boise community, to think that if they can win one more game, they get to have, who knows, Ohio State or Clemson or someone like that have to come play on the blue turf. I mean, stuff like that's very cool. I did see the rankings recently. I do think they're really going to have to figure out, what is their criteria here? Because it's hard for me to see, at that end, the Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Miami, to see how they rank that out. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to me. So I think they got to figure that part out. What is the criteria? How are we ranking this? Because it's hard to argue a couple of these teams being left out. But that's also part of the cool part about these is, right, it creates those arguments, creates those discussions. But I love it. I love that they're allowing a group of 5 team to get in there. And I think it's going to be really fun. And I think you'll see a true champion at the end, which is great.
Yeah, I guess, Coach, you could spread it to your level at the FCS level. It's really the same type of thought. Look, the Big Sky is thought of pretty highly. You guys did well there. So did, NAU makes it, Montana State, Idaho. I mean, there's 5 teams that get there. When there's maybe some other conferences go, hey, our second best team might deserve to be in there. I guess the same argument trickles down to your level, but when you get enough teams to make it, I guess it just all proves out at the end, doesn't it?
I think no matter how you do it, there's going to be arguments, right? Like when there was the BCS, then I remember when they left Miami out of the national championship in 2000, they took Florida State instead, and Miami beat Florida State, and so there was arguments about that. Then they go to a 14 playoff, and last year, right, they take Alabama instead of I forget the other team that was going against them, and then that's an argument, So
yeah.
Now you're at 12 teams, and now the 13th team's going to. I mean, there's always going to be an argument, but I just think the thought of there was only 4 teams or only 2 teams, that always bothered me, because knowing college football, there's always a larger number of teams than you think that have the capability of doing that, and they should be given the opportunity, if they have a good enough season, to get that done. I do think you've noticed that because the transfer portal, I don't know if there's any like elite great teams anymore. I think all the teams have kind of come back to reality. I feel the same way about FCS level, that you can't really load up anymore because of the transfer portal. So I think the cool part is I think all these teams are pretty close, and I think you'll see a lot of really good games.
Coach, speaking of arguments, I know you haven't had to defend Lan Larison because he's done it himself. What he's done on the field has just been amazing. I saw the Walter Payton finalists, and he got acknowledgement but isn't in the final 3. Honestly, I'm a little surprised by that, and you guys have bigger things to go for, but individually, I kind of felt he got slided there.
Yeah, I don't know how much time you guys have. I could go for a long time about that one. I know that he's not going to say anything, and that's how he was raised, and that's why we love him. So I like to be his hype man, I guess. But I just think that's a travesty. I think it's awful. I don't know how that process goes. You cannot tell me that there's a better football player than him. And it's not that I'm just saying it. His numbers back it up. There's only one player in all of football at all levels right now that has more yards than Lan Larison, and it's Ashton Genty, who we recruited to Boise, and he might win the Heisman. So the fact that took place, it doesn't make sense to me. We're upset, obviously, and the 2 quarterbacks they took haven't had nearly the type of season that Miles has had. So I think some of it just goes back to what people are used to at FCS level. I don't think there's as many eyes watching the games, and UC Davis hasn't become a national brand that way. And so I think it's just a reminder that we have a long way to go and how people view us. And hopefully it adds a little more motivation to our guys. And the only way for us to get more attention is to make people pay attention. So hopefully we can do that the next few weeks.
Well, regular season is one thing, Coach, but we're getting into the playoffs now. And as you know, and as the audience knows, during the regular season, I have taken the time at the end of our interviews to share a story with you. Weirdly enough, the way the schedule's worked out, I've had a connection with just about every team you've played, but I'm switching it up this week. I'm gonna take you back to 2003, Coach, and a young Timmy Plough was fresh out of high school. He was doing some recruiting visits, UC Davis, obviously. I think Harvard was in there at one point, and Illinois State. And apparently the word on the street was, hey, it's too cold there. I'm going to go to California. And I got to tell you, years later now, 20 years later, I had a conversation this week when I found out I was going to be Illinois State. I like to do my research. And I had a conversation with John Malkovich, the actor, who is also an alum of Illinois State. He had me call Jane Lynch, the actress, who is also an alum. And they both pointed me. I know I'm going a long way here. They both pointed me to Reggie Redbird, their mascot, and said, he's got the dirt. Talked to him. And he told me, he said, the biggest favor that ever has been given to the Illinois State football program was Plough staying at Davis, because that gave us Yance Vaughn. We didn't want him anyways. We're just glad he turned us down and just absolutely laid into you. So when you get on that field this weekend and you look across at that team, I just want you to know that behind your back, they have been thrashing you nonstop all week long. Whether that motivates you or not, I don't know, but I just wanted to share that story with you.
Well, as usual, I appreciate it. You've tapped into my motivation. I'd like to say that I remember my recruiting trip in 2003, but not to go into too much detail, but I had a lot of fun and don't remember a whole much of the trip. But you can call me a wimp all you want, but I'm a San Diego kid, and I took a couple steps off that plane and said, "Oh boy, this is gonna be tough. Can't wear flip flops out here." So I'm looking forward to it. Full circle moment. It's going to be a great game. I hope we get a great crowd. And but thank you again as usual. Because I'm definitely going to have to talk to old Reggie and make sure he feels it.
All right, Coach. Good luck this weekend. We hope you get your revenge. Win one for Coach Plough this time.
Yes,
that's what it is. Not me. Win one for the old Plower.
Yeah,
I don't know if that works.
Oh yeah,
Coach, take care.
Yeah. I appreciate it. You guys find joy this week.
You got
Thanks,
it,
Coach.
You got it, brother. Take care. Coach Tim.
He truly missed it. He missed that last week. He's like, I needed my motivation.
Yeah, you know what? I had to dig deep.
Yeah.
We'll take a break when we come back. Kings Rewind next.
The NFL's leading rusher plays